Hello, my children. It's time to get spooky.
Spooky.
You're saying again.
Oh yeah, I am. Again.
I was at work today and I was just struck with the inspiration for another set of 5 Halloween nail arts. Part of it was inspired by comments that I got, but others was just because I never get to do that much spooky stuff during spooky time, so it's time to get spooky. Just like last time.
It's gonna glow in the dark.
Spooky. I don't know what else to say. I don't know. I just wanted to do more Halloween stuff because it's spooky and spooky lasts so little. I just wanted to be spooky all year.
Are these gonna be like increasing difficulty again?
Oh god, I didn't even think about the difficulty. Yeah, I mean, we'll find out as we go which one's gonna be awful. Like last time, the ghost was the most difficult one and I put it on the smallest finger. I'm not doing that this time. I'm gonna put the easiest one on my pinky. So maybe they're increasing difficulty, but I think that the pointer finger is gonna be the most difficult one. We'll see. Reflecting me will come back and tell you later. And I don't really feel like doing nail art on both hands, so let's get naked. Nails.
And before we begin, I wanted to let y'all know that all polishes used are listed in the description if you want to fully recreate any of these designs. Now, what screams Halloween more than candy corn? This one was even easier than any of the others in the last 5 spooky nail arts because it's literally just 3 colors in horizontal stripes. I started with 2 coats of white to get to opacity, and whenever you're doing nail art that requires layering colors, you have to put the lightest color on the base, even if it's not the majority of the nail. That's because light colors of nail polish tend to be thin, and you want to make sure that you can see all of the colors. So next up, I used a long, thin line brush to draw horizontal lines of yellow, which I filled in with either the super tiny nail art brush that I have, or carefully with the brush from the bottle. And I know by now you may be asking, Nick, aren't you making a mess? Why yes, chat, I am, but no need to be scared when you have some acetone and a cleanup brush. Okay, simply dip the brush in some acetone, wipe off the excess to not ruin what you painted, and then carefully pick up the polish on your skin/cuticle. That way you can make all the mess you want and clean it up to have a super neat manicure. My favorite cleanup brush is the Mani Cleanup Brush by Jessie Monroe Nail Care. I love how after all of this time, it's still incredibly sharp regardless of how poorly I take care of my nail painting equipment. And while I'm finishing up, I have to take a moment to ask, do you like candy corn? I feel like I'm in the absolute minority here when I say that candy corn is pretty much my favorite Halloween candy ever. I will usually buy myself a bag of it around now and then ration it until August, or some years I just keep eating it in one sitting until my tummy hurts. Anyways, I added a layer of glow-in-the-dark top coat, and the candy corn nail is complete. And before we continue, it's time for your weekly call-out post. About 78% of my watch time comes from those who are not subscribed, so don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more nail art tutorials in the future. Now, who else was a toilet paper mummy at least once as a child? To start off the next few designs, I began with an ivory white polish as the background color. Next up was a layer of glow-in-the-dark top coat because I wanted the wrapping pattern to conceal the glow. For that, I used a thin lining brush with Secret Society by Hollow Taco. This is a gray polish with a golden shimmer and a hint of hollow that I thought would bring some visual interest to the design. I started by pulling 2 long lines from one corner of the nail to the other to make one strip of fabric that will be in the foreground. For the other stripes, I tried to keep them roughly the same thickness and maintain consistency when a stripe went below another one. I also tried to vary the angle of the stripes as well to add more visual interest. And to add a little bit more depth to the design, I watered down the polish with a little bit of nail polish thinner and my smallest brush to add some thin detail onto the stripes with patches that ran parallel to the wrap. Then to add even more depth, on sections of overlap I added darker regions to mimic the shadow that one stripe casts on the other using even more watered gray polish. And while I'm adding some detail,
Has anyone else had that Halloween costume that they've always wanted to do, but they just can't because they don't have time to set it up or any parties to go to? What I really want to do is I want to go as Yzma and Kronk with my husband because that'd be the best thing ever. Guess which one is which? Say Kronk for me, it'll make me happy. So one day, when I have enough time to sew this, because we'll pretend that I have enough sewing experience and understanding to do this, you'll see it. You'll see it.
And that wouldn't even be our first couple's Halloween costume. The first time we went as Jack and Sally. I threw together something for Jack and painted my face, but for my husband, I made his entire patchwork shirt. Dang, that was a whole 9 years ago. I'm almost as old as a mummy. See how I brought it back to the nail art? Anyways, the mummy wrap nail is now complete. And I know I did a blood drip last time, but I wanted to go more CSI core this time. Once again, I started with an ivory base layer and glow-in-the-dark top coat. Then to start, I began by making some fingerprints by gently pressing my finger into Devil's Advocate by Hollow Taco, which is a blood red jelly polish, dapping off the excess on my silicone mat and then lightly tapping it onto the nail. To draw the blood spatter, I looked up some reference pictures for inspiration, as I would always recommend, especially if you're starting out with nail art. And I'm gonna apologize now, I have some experience with forensics, so this is gonna be a mini science lesson. Blood drips that fall straight down have a circular base with lines called splines that come out radially from the center. The length and frequency of the splines are indicative of the speed of the blood on impact with a surface, so I wanted to make it look like there was a good splat and added a bunch. Those splines from tip back to the base will be rounded off at the tip, thinner, and then rounded off again when connecting back to the main blood drop. Additionally, super fast drops will make satellite droplets, or small extra drips that will be mostly oval shaped that point back to the main drop. In forensics, knowing these relationships help predict how blood got to where it was found, helping forensic scientists recreate a crime scene. And after scientifically assembling a blood spatter pattern, the bloody nail is complete. Moving on, we have the gay icon second only to the Babadook himself, it's Ghostface. Again, I began with an ivory base layer and then glow in the dark, and once again, I would recommend a reference picture, but I'm gonna try to break it down into the major shapes. The bottom of the mask essentially makes a trapezoid shape, so you need two diagonal lines pointing in at the tip of the nail that start about halfway up the nail. For the mouth, you want to start with an almost oval shape that was pinched in the center, with the smaller side at the bottom of the nail. I had to go in and tweak the thickness of this one from time to time off camera so I could see what I was doing better, so don't mind if it changes a little. From there, I added two C shapes to make the cheekbones, and I filled in the sides of the mask with black paint. And because I am the sweatiest woman in the nail industry, I always have to have a fan pointing at me at all times, even when I'm recording this now. So the polish on my mat tends to dry out quickly. An easy solution to that is to add some nail polish thinner to what you're working with. You want to make sure you don't add too much or you sacrifice opacity, but it's a good way to keep painting and keep the air flowing. The eyes are bean shaped that are facing back to back, and I know it could be hard to get the symmetry, but if you go slowly, then it should be possible. My recommendation for this in general is practice this a few times off of your nail, painting it on some kind of silicone mat so you can practice what it's going to be like when you actually do the nail art. And finally, the nostrils are two diagonal lines that point to the bottom corner of the nail between the eyes. And at this point I thought I was done, but the husband suggested adding a hood to match the character better. I had to be careful to not just flood my cuticles, so I used my tiny brush and rotated it while I was picking up the paint to make the thinnest tip possible. Then I outlined Ghostface up near my cuticle to give him that classic hood. It did take a little bit of cleanup, but honestly, I think this solidified the overall design, so thank you, husband.
You're welcome.
And finally, it's time for the quintessential Halloween jack-o'-lantern. I started with a pale yellow base and then added glow in the dark. This was the most complex design, honestly more complex than it needed to be, but I'm gonna break down the layers from background to foreground. I wanted the face of the jack-o'-lantern to be the only thing glowing on the nail, so I had to have that the lowest layer, as everything else was gonna be built up on top, blocking the glow. Next up, I wanted the background of the pumpkin to be a darker color that contrasts well, so I picked Inkwell by Ivory Tower, as it has a dark brown base color with a gold micro shimmer to match the yellow glow in the eyes. The top of the pumpkin was two large curves from one end of the nail to the other, and don't worry about the stem as we're going to add that on top at the end. Now for the orange, I first outlined the eyes as two very pointed triangles, and then a wicked grin made from two C shapes to make the mouth. After filling in the rest of the pumpkin, I added very small vertical lines for teeth to make him a spooky little vampire pumpkin. And here's where I went a little extra, because I started mixing colors together to add more depth. I started by adding curved lines that went from the dip on the top all the way around to the bottom to make the grooves of the pumpkin. And if you don't want to shade this, I would stop here, but let me be extra. Mixing the colors to create different shades, I tried to make the side of the section closer to the face lighter, and the side further away darker to make him look like he's glowing. And while I'm working on that,
I should probably mention this shirt. Yes, it's incredibly silly and ridiculous and I love it, but it actually matches a tattoo that I have. My husband and I have had a tradition where we've gotten spooky tattoos every Halloween for the last 4 or 5 years. This year's the first year we're not doing it because it doesn't work with our work schedules. This shirt actually matches one of the spooky tattoos that I've gotten in the past.
It's a dinosaur as a ghost.
It's a dinosaur as a ghost.
And I also have a pumpkin tattoo, so once again, I think I maintained the title of the Segway Queen. And finally, I added a cute little stem on top in the shape of an upside down triangle. It took a little bit of trial and error to find a color that stood out against the background, but now my little vampire jack-o'-lantern is complete.
So here's the full hand. Low-key, I love it. Not as cohesive as the last Halloween manicure, but still, I think it's a little better. It's definitely a lot harder.
I think that the finger order was mostly aligned to the difficulty, as the pinky was definitely the easiest and the pumpkin was the most challenging, though once again, I will say that I went a little extra on the pumpkin with the shading that I didn't need to do. I would probably swap the mummy and the bloodstain in difficulty because the mummy required a steady hand for the straight lines as opposed to the more organic blood spatter pattern. I will say I'm incredibly glad that I did the Ghostface on a larger finger this time because she was extra. As a full manicure, it's not as harmonious because of the color scheme or theme, but the point of this video was to give you all ideas to inspire a full hand based on one or more of the designs. And now for what all of you have been waiting for.
It's gonna glow in the dark.
Glow-in-the-dark manicures just make me so happy. I'm super impressed that all of the colors of the candy corn nails show different levels of glow, so you can still kind of see what it is even when it's glowing in the dark. And I'm also super proud of the jack-o'-lantern because it worked perfectly and showed only a glowing spooky grin in the darkness. And I waited about an hour to add the top coat, which inevitably blurred the Ghostface a tiny bit. I got a lot of comments last time that a water-based top coat could prevent that because it doesn't drag the lower layer of polish. But somehow, I don't own one yet. I've also heard that using a Peely base could work because it's water-based, but I was too scared to try it out because I love this set too much.
I do think that this one is not necessarily the most beginner-friendly. I did a lot of paint mixing and thinning things, but I hope that following the tutorial is something that you'll be able to do and try it on your own. If you ever try any of my nail art, please share it and tag me. I love to see nail art that I inspire because it's kind of wild that I have people that are inspired by my nail art when I used to try like Simply Nailogical's nail art back in the day. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below if there's any other nail art you want me to try in the future. I love getting your suggestions and trying them out, like this one. So maybe your comment will be the next video. Anyways, that's all I have for you today, so I'll see you all in the next video. Stay spooky.
Spooky. Spooky. Ah.